Being a passenger engine, Emily never took much notice of the goods yard. Each morning, she'd bring her coaches to the station, then puff off with the passengers in tow. Today, however, she heard quite a commotion. Airy, the ironworks diesel, was collecting trucks of scrap bound for the smelters. He clattered around, shoving the trucks roughly. "Go on, get moving," he rumbled. The trucks were cross. They slipped on their brakes. "Grrr," he growled. "They'd come quietly with a gentler touch," Emily advised. "Ha! I'm not taking tips from an antique like you. I bet you've never so much as coupled to a truck before." "I'm a passenger engine," said Emily, "but—" "Ha! You look more like a penny farthing than a passenger engine," Airy interrupted. "Just you trundle off with those bird boxes you call coaches and leave the real work to real engines." With a roar, Airy dragged the screeching trucks away. "I'd like to show that diesel a thing or two," she scowled. "If only I could... Oh, yes, that's exactly what I'll do." The next morning, Emily arrived early at the yards. Scrap trucks were scattered around the sidings. She gently buffered up to one. "What's going on?" groused the truck. "You're not our engine." "I saw how that diesel treated you yesterday, and I thought you'd like to know how real engines take care of trucks." Emily pushed the truck gently forward. It was quite taken aback and stayed silent. She brought it carefully to a halt, its buffers just nudging those of the truck behind it. "Right then," said Emily, "let's get the rest of you sorted." Now, Emily isn't as strong as the other engines. The trucks were loaded with heavy, rusted steel, and she had to work hard to get them moving. At last, tired but pleased, Emily had the train ready. When Airy arrived, he was speechless. "A gentler touch seemed to do this time. But what do I know? I'm not a real engine." And she left to find her coaches. Airy was furious. He banged into the trucks as he backed down. "Who's this horrid oily thing?" they cried. "We want Emily!" Airy ignored them. But the next few days were awful. The trucks gave him more trouble than ever. They only wanted to be pulled and shunted by Emily. It didn't take long for Airy to hatch a scheme of his own. "I was wrong," he said when he next saw Emily. "You are a proper engine, and I have much to learn." Emily smiled triumphantly. "Do you think you could take these trucks to the scrapyard? They don't want me anymore. They're like your own little army. Please, show me how you do it." "Of course," smirked Emily. "I'll show you how to handle them." Perhaps if Emily hadn't been so conceited, she might have remembered she wasn't built for goods trains. The trucks were pleased to see her, and when the guard's whistle blew, she tried to move forwards. Her big wheels had trouble gripping the rails, and the trucks were heavier than ever. At last, she began to move slowly out of the station. "Must be my lucky day," smirked Airy. "I'll get trucks of scrap and an engine to take to the smelters." Out on the main line, Emily was not enjoying herself. It was hard work to keep the train moving. The trucks were behaving well, and even began to sing. "Emily's Army here to stay, Emily's Army on our way." This made Emily smile, and she puffed determinedly onward. Just when she thought it was becoming easier, the line started to slope downwards. She felt the weight of the trucks on her buffers, and the train picked up speed. "Ooh!" she cried. Her wheels couldn't get a proper grip, and her brakes weren't strong enough to hold the trucks. "Stop! Stop!" she wailed. And that's when it happened.
Hold back! Hold back!
The driver inspected Emily. "A valiant effort, old girl," he said, "but that was too much for your brakes. I'm afraid we'll have to call for help." Soon, Boko arrived. He left Emily at the works, then took the trucks on to the smelters. The Fat Controller came to see her.
Emily, I know you're eager to be useful, but you should have known a train like that was beyond your capabilities.
"I'm sorry, sir. I just wanted to show that area a thing or two."
The yard manager told me all about that, smiled the Fat Controller. He was quite impressed with your shunting. You may not be able to pull heavy trains, but I know how your expertise can be put to good use.
When Emily returned from the works, she felt better than ever. Her brakes were stronger, and her brass shone brightly in the sun. The passengers were thrilled to have her back, and even the trucks cheered when they saw her. And Airy? Well, Emily did show him a thing or two. The Fat Controller made sure of it. He was confined to the yards under orders not to leave until he learned Emily's ways of shunting. Needless to say, the topic of real engines never came up again.